Jax, you got the mic.
Hi, Jack Sefyong, pronouns she and her, and Diversity and Inclusion Manager for Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue Service. Also Deputy Chair of Board of Trustees for LGBT Foundation in Manchester. I think the first thing, the conversation about BAME, we've had a lot of discussions, especially with Black Lives Matter. That raised a lot of current kind of debate about names and lots of other kind of anti-racist practice or racism in the workplace. And I think I go back to black being beautiful and the political terminology of black. And so I think we really struggled with eradicating blackness out of any terminology. So we've had lots of rich debates. So we did have a BAME staff network. We changed it to Racially Diverse Staff Network. We changed it to RISE after Mayor Angelo, and we've just changed the name again. So I think in some ways my heart is saying it's moving us away from why we need those networks in the first place and about inequalities.
Keep it to that. That was really short and sweet. That was lovely. It's here, so the context from Jax is it's a term that her staff networks used, and they're trying to grapple with what term they want to be called by, yeah? That's not what Westminster County Council is saying. This is the complexity of this debate. What is that article saying about BAME? It's also based, just to talk a bit further, it's based on the CRED report. Remember what Nazir Afzal said about Tony Seeley. He discredited the term in the first place, but he didn't really understand it. Miriam, what's your view on that at the moment?
I think it's, as you said, Jack, it's a really complex argument. I think I've spoken to people from who I work with from the Asian communities who have said they don't like BAME because black always comes first. So I think there are lots and lots of different opinions that we need to take on around this. But for me as a white person, I don't feel it's up to me.
Good point then.
And as a practitioner, I wouldn't seek to
Miriam, let's keep it to
view.
one point at a time. That's a brilliant point you make there. It's not for me to decide what the term is, and the community doesn't like the term. So I'm going to have two more views, and then I'm going to give you Jack's TED talk on it.
For me, what Jack's mentioned earlier on, the political term black, and language continually changes on a regular basis. And I think we get lost in the conversation around language rather than doing the work. So let's focus on the work about getting inclusivity and fairness rather than focusing on language, which diverts us onto other debates and discussions rather than actually making change.
Brilliant, Mohammed.
So I don't want the discussions around language. Let's make the change that needs to happen to get inclusivity.
So Mohammed makes another point. Make a note of these points. These are really critical points. Mohammed makes the point and the link between the term BAME and our corporate duty. What are we trying to do? And is this distracting from the work we have to do? Is language now a distraction? Over to you. Your point.
I've been around a very long time, and I've heard more proxy terms and more discussion about the language, what we should or shouldn't be saying, in which particular month we're saying it. The reality is that if you are of an ethnic minority in this particular country, not in a global context, you are much more likely to be at risk of our demand and suffer inequalities that are socially based. So, and it is a similar argument that would say that Asians don't fight fires. Who fights the fires in Asia? Because we have all these sorts of stereotypes and languages that are inappropriate and wrong. But it is not for me to say what, I can say what I want to be called, and I don't want to be called female, I want to be called woman, but only I will answer that question because that is my preference. I don't want to be a biological study of female.
Okay.
So I think that it is up to the communities, but as a derogatory term, we are aware that some communities do not like this phrase.
Here we go. This has not been rehearsed, but I'm really angry about this debate. I'm angry with Jack Singh, because Jack Singh in the 1970s and 60s stood behind the term black. I was black and I was proud. I was black and I knew that black people, people of colour, had discrimination. And we fought that fight really well. We were distracted a few times by language, by people saying you can't have gollywogs on jam jars, you can't have manholes, they're called access holes. They were nothing to do with outcomes. We distracted us. We didn't get involved in that language debate. Then along came a group of people who told us, we're minority ethnics, we're white, we're Europeans, we're Romanians. We suffer the same inequalities, live in the same areas of poverty as you do. But when you're fighting for black, we're white and we get discrimination. We said, come into our camp. We'll fight your corner, and BME will be the term we stand behind, because black minority ethnic groups suffer inequalities in workforce and in other areas of education and health. That went well for a while. Then along came, as Miriam said, a group of Asian people who said, I'm not black, I'm Asian. We said, okay, we'll call it black, Asian and minority ethnic. And I accepted that argument as well. And I thought that then would be the end. We'd have a group of people. We aggregated, Alex, me and you as senior people, Michelle, we would aggregate our staff data, we'd aggregate our patient data, and we'd find out who had the worst inequalities. Did any of us in board levels ever ask any individual to declare yourself as BAME? No, we did not. We allowed our staff networks to call themselves RISE or Respect or whatever they wanted, because that was their right. Along came Priti Patel and said, I am not BAME, I don't like the term. Then the debate started. Then Tony Seeley was appointed and he denied there was institutional discrimination, structural discrimination, and the term BAME was a bad term that meant people weren't lined up behind it. Nobody had ever asked people to line up behind it. It's a term to aggregate, to understand inequality, for us to reduce it, for our communities to hold us to account, for us to use under protected characteristics and equality impact assessments. But you know what the real agenda behind all this is? The term BAME has been used for decades, either under black or black minority ethnic, to allocate resources where they're really required, to allocate government funding where inequalities are. What will happen when the term goes? How will you allocate funding? Will you use global majority as a term to see where funding should go? Do you even understand that term? So once you get a term that's galvanizing people, identifying inequalities, what do you do if you haven't got enough resources? Try to destroy the data. What did Nazir say? When he identified the causes of child abuse, they didn't give him credit for that. They tried to destroy him because he was destroying their narrative. So please, do not get involved in the debate of BAME. You know that you as individuals will have your protected characteristics declared. It's the organisation's responsibility to collate that in whichever way, look at intersectionality, and I hope the whole of this conference has helped to galvanise the thinking behind this. Don't be distracted by the language. Language is very important. It's dynamic, it's always growing. But don't be distracted because it's the outcomes we're trying to produce. So thank you for that. So one more question, then I'm going to go to the floor, and I think we'll probably be finishing a little bit earlier than we expected. What's your takeaway from this conference? We'll just go down the panel from Diane. What's your one or two big takeaways?
I think I had some really big takeaways yesterday. One was Alex and how we started our conversation. The honesty and the vulnerability of a human being at the top of their profession was utterly inspiring. And I also felt that all of us in this room probably have got some very difficult stories that people don't know about us. that we choose not to share because we're too scared to, or we're too embarrassed to, or too Republican to. And I think that was huge. Secondly, I thought Steve McGurk, it was all very well to say all the things he said, but when you are sitting in an organisation, you want to say those things, it's not that easy to say them. And of course, lastly, one of my own superheroes, Nazia, nailed it again by giving us some permission of being able to speak truth to power, and as EDI officers, we're expected to, but it's not always liked when we do. So I think those are my three things. Thank you.
I think for me, obviously the inspirational speakers that came through the last 2 days, but I think most importantly what Nazir again talked about is actually making that change and talking to power. And we've been discussing this, I thought about it yesterday, for the last 10, 15, 20 years, report after report. Justin talked about state of fire 1, 2, 3, 4, same recommendations, and Wayne summed it up very clearly. Nothing's changed, so we need to sort of listen to and hear Nazir's word and actually go out there and make the change and challenge the power that's out there.
I think for me, because absolutely all that and sharing and listening to lived stories has been amazing. I think for me it's about role models, and it is seeing people like you that really matters. And I think everyone that's been here over the past 2 days, the networking, the connectivity, the strong stories behind the scenes, whether it was dancing last night or those short conversations passing each other going to workshops, I think are so empowering, and I've met some awesome people, so thank you for those rich discussions and debates. But I think actually I've actually had food for my soul as well as all the food that we've had throughout the conference. So we need that. We need to keep energised and motivated. So this is why reflection is really important. Taking time out the day job and having 2 days to come and reflect and get some food for the soul is really, really important. So I thank everyone for that. Thank you.
Totally agreed, Jax. It's very, very important to get re-energised. I think it becomes very exhausting when you've been having these conversations for years, and it feels like the pace of change is glacial. And when you do make change, people then object to it as well. So being able to connect with others who think along the same lines, but also get some diversity of thought and really understand each other's perspectives is also really, really important. Nazir is also one of my heroes, and hearing him tell us, I'm not going to swear, but tell us to get on with it, I think has just been brilliant, and it's certainly given me some energy. So thanks.
So superb. Let me just capture that in a second or two. We've had an amazing 2 days. Occasionally, we've been asked to check how far have we got. We've got a long way. Steve McGurk said that the other day about AFSA. We started AFSA, myself and, we started Equality Diversity conferences with Steve McGurk and me running multi-faith conferences for CFO. And the very first one we ran was around Islam and Sikhism. Very, very brave following 9/11. That was CFO's bravery in doing that. And I can recall, remember it, Diane? Soho Road, Sikh Temple. I'm a member of that Sikh Temple. The pride, I almost cried. First conference, you walk in and they take you into the black car park. Can you remember it now? They lead you up the back staircase. On every there was an image of the fire service's great work. The fire service's prevention. They'd done their research. They then put in front of us people from different professions from the Sikh background talking about how they practice Sikhism. To top it all, there's a prayer room right at the top of the Sikh temple, and I've been going there for 20 years. Didn't even know it existed. It's only reserved for the VIPs. Guess who got in there first? The chief fire officers, the deputy chiefs, the assistant chiefs, the HR directors, the equality diversity leads. It was one of the most humbling experiences. But one thing sticks with me. and sadly my memory's gone. She was the HR director of South Yorkshire. She said, this was a phenomenal conference with phenomenal speakers, but the most humble thing that I learned was the humbleness of the people. Sorry, the most phenomenal thing was the beauty of the Sikh temple with the gold and ornate and things, but the most humble thing was the hearts and the humbleness of the people inside. And I think that's what this conference is about. That humbleness, that equality of voice, everybody leaving their rank markings at home, not physically, but absolutely mentally, where everybody's able to engage. I had some wonderful comments from our team in Merseyside talking about how you made them feel for their first conference. I've heard first-time conference attendees for AFSA saying, what a fantastic conference. And Alex, sadly, that's why NFCC gave up doing equality diversity conferences 10 years ago. They realised that really here was something they could actually hand over to the staff and let the staff run them, and that's why we've been running them. Are there any quick questions for our equality diversity leads? They are undervalued. Definitely, Alex, you need to take this to the NFCC. There's a range of salaries from up and down the country, and we don't anywhere near match the NHS. Because if you've got good quality people sat there, there's somebody sitting behind you from the NHS watching that talent. At the far back, question?
Bear with me a second, please, because there's two parts to this question and a little bit of an opinion. I've been trying to think how to word this over the last couple of days, but do we know what the true barriers are to a more diverse workforce? We think we do, but to me they're no different to the police and the ambulance service, and they don't have the problems that we do. The only real difference is fitness and medical standards, and there's a good reason why we have both of those. But if we want a truly diverse workforce, do we need a long-term strategy, a little bit like Joe said yesterday, where you're working with your key stage 1 and 2 at the minute, where instead of a young girl saying, I'm going to be a nurse, she thinks, actually, I'm going to be a firefighter. Or someone from an Asian background, instead of going into medicine, again, will choose a fire service. And in that time, your positive action is still working with each community, so it becomes an accepted role, a good role, and you're seen as, we are seen as an employer of choice for everybody, and we break the stereotypes there, rather than keep targeting adults that's already chose a career, been to university, been to college, and then we're going to say, actually, forget all that and come and be a firefighter. That's why in the 20 odd years I've been around, actually nothing's really changed. We've got a few more women, we've got a few more people from different ethnic backgrounds, but we've still not made any great progress. And the last part to that is, if this was one fire service now, and we've got probably 50-50 split male-female, around a third from an ethnic minority, is the fire service really ready to support the different diversities of this room from day one to the end of their career, whether that be promotional choices or lifestyle changes, changes that come with age, etc., etc. We hide behind policy quite a lot, but personally I don't think the structure's in place.
So I'll break that down into two questions for my panel. Question number, the first part of your question I'll answer. The police and ambulance service are not that much better than us. They also look to us. But yes, what can we do more on positive action? And the next question is also, if we do break the barriers down and improve the recruitment of BME people, is the culture right in the fire service to keep them? We know from Bedfordshire Police it isn't, because they're losing a good 5-10% of those diverse candidates within the first 2 years.
I think my first response to your statement is, who is the fire service? You said, is the fire service ready? We're all the fire service. I think that you're right that we hide behind policy, but those people with the power, and a lot of them are in this room now, need to actually ensure that policy is thrown out of the window around these things, and that actually we challenge poor behaviours. What that will do, for me, is ensure that those people feel included, and then they will want to stay. The reality for me is that the reason things haven't moved on at the speed we would want them to is It's because, and I said it earlier, we haven't really wanted the change. There are groups of people who work in various fire and rescue services who actively resist this change, and we have to be honest with ourselves about that. Part of the reason for that, in my opinion, is because we haven't sold the benefits of having that diversity. We haven't been successful in doing that. And you could argue, why should we sell it? But the reality is that's the only way that we're going to change it. Some people are feeling a huge sense of loss in fire and rescue services by us driving for this change. And I think we have to acknowledge that, talk about it, and the people with the power need to make the changes needed.
Okay, Jax?
I think it just reminds me of if we start with what's in it for me, and we all look at ourselves first, because that's how we make change. When I joined the fire service 12 years ago, I was actually shocked. I felt like I'd gone back to the dark ages. I've got to be honest about that because of my background in charity in the third sector. And I either thought, well, I'll leave, or I stay and I do something about it. And I think it's for all of us to step up and be that change. And I look around this room and I see awesome diversity. We've heard about diversity, and we're all a part of fire and rescue services across the country. So we can be that change. It sounds like a song, and I know it's a bit of a cliche, but it starts with the individual. It starts with us making that change. And I know there's lots of barriers and there's lots of stereotypes and it's exhausting, but to me there's something about consistency. And I've had it said that it's consistent. You've got to build that trust, because otherwise people think we're ticking boxes, whether it's out in the community or it's with our own organisation. So you've got to be authentic. You've got to stick to what really matters to you as an individual and share your story and share your concerns and frustrations, and just keep turning up and being there.
Cheers, Jax.
Yep.
Mohammed?
Yeah, briefly. Again, you have got examples from places like the police, but when you look back 20 years ago, the police got a lot of people in, but they went that through the back door. So there was no difference, and in some cases it's still happening. But I think one of the things we tend to focus on positive action, and yes, that's important, but we sometimes do it literally a month before the recruitment takes place. We need to actually look at, as Nazir said, community engagement and long-term community engagement, because that's where you build relationship and trust with communities. And then you will start getting people coming through. But that needs investment. So this is where, again, decision makers need to sort of put money into that community engagement work, proactive community engagement work, to build that trust, but then also making sure that culture changes within the organization so people actually stay. And we need to start thinking differently, because again, as Zach says, we've done it the same way, so we carry on. We're not doing things differently. So let's think differently and think out the box.
Think differently. Final comment.
I also need to reiterate that the ambulance service in terms of ethnicity profiling is much worse than fire, and the police is comparable, and AFSA did do that piece of work a couple of years ago. So the grass isn't greener somewhere else, and I think one of the things that I notice within our sector is that we encourage people that we think are different to add value, but when they arrive we do expect them to be and sort of comply with the white, able-bodied, heterosexual Christianist 35-year-old man. And if they don't do that, then they become problematic. So I think for me it has always been, if we have good community relations and not, the sort of 20-minute safe and well visit and disappear, but if we actually work within our communities and we get to know our communities will know what the service is. We are very, very good at all of our material tending to be about blue lights and fire, when in reality we know sort of around 10% of a firefighter's role is riding those trucks and responding to an emergency. The public don't know this. It's the best kept secret of a firefighter's role, is that the public have no idea what it is that you do day to day, which is generally not fighting fires. You are the best examples of community engagement anywhere, and we don't even document that. We have other people doing community engagement, forgetting that the people that understand their own role and fire safety are the firefighters, and we're not utilising you effectively to do structured, sustainable community development. In my own area, you know, if a station manager gets newly appointed in Burton, he'll rock up, and it will be he. He'll rock up at the 7 mosques that are in Burton, and the imam will go, "Oh, you're the new one." And that's the only time they'll ever engage with them. And yet when we want to recruit, a couple of weeks before, we'll go along and say, "Do you want to be a firefighter?" Well, no, they don't. Why would they? So I think this isn't rocket science. This is the same as the proxy terminologies. If we want to do something, can we just get on and do it?
Super
and stop
time.
fiddling around
Just
with it.
get on and do it. But there's a famous song, "The answer, my friend, is not blowing in the wind. The answer, my friend, is in report after report. The answer, my friend, is in Stephen Lawrence's report, the thematic reviews, the Bain review, in the great report we did, Smoke and Mirrors. All the answers are there. The outcomes of the recommendations are not so clear that we've met those outcomes. Positive action has been talked about on a regular basis. There's 2 acts, 2010 Equality Act with the positive action, there's health and safety. You get prosecuted every day, health and safety breaches, may be accused of financial breaches. Has any fire service ever been taken to court over a breach of positive action? Any other organisation? No, because the people that practice the Equality Act and positive action are behind that wall when the line to cross is in the middle of the room. Nobody is testing positive action to the limits. People will pontificate and say, "Oh, we want quotas. Oh, we want affirmative action. We want positive discrimination." You're not even using the law you've got today, and you want a better law. So I'm afraid we need more sessions like this. We need more passion like this. We need to take the recommendations off the shelves and practice them. We need leadership that's absolutely consistent and long-term. We can't just keep blowing in the wind and changing every time a leader changes. The strategies have to be clear. And also, one of my other challenges to teams like this, do you know how to challenge? As staff networks, how do you challenge your chief fire officer and your board? Do you know how to ask the questions around the equality impact assessment? Do you know what regulatory reports have to produce? Can you ask the question how we improve that? We don't do enough training of our community and of our staff to be able to challenge us. I love being challenged, but I'm a chair of a mental health trust. I hardly ever get a question asked about equality and diversity. And therefore, we have to take some personal responsibility. And how do we do that in AFSA? Can we do it? What was that? I didn't hear it. Can we do it? Did I hear yes we can? Come here, Diane. Can we do it? Lead the chorus. Go on then. Can we do it?
Yes, I can.
Yes, I can. Because if you say yes, we can, you're asking Diane to do it, Mohammed to do it. When you say yes, I can, it will happen. Alex will be smiling all day long because he can sit in his office like the old chief officers of years ago. They used to play golf on a Friday, Monday and a Tuesday. So yes, I can means delegation, responsibility accepted, and I'm not going to be allowed to finish because Sati will also accuse me of not saying the other thing we say in AFSA. If you enjoyed today, tell one person. Bring one person with you next year that doesn't believe in the agenda. I promise you, you'll have a champion for next time. I know many fire brigades, when they allocate people, they try to put some people have been before and some new people. Keep doing it because we can keep spreading the news. Let me also give you the gifts from AFSA. As members of AFSA, your regions are entitled to a one-day development session which AFSA will fund. So you can do that. We couldn't do 8 a year. I can honestly, although we got that as a strategy, we normally get 1 or 2 a year. Essex has done one this year around positive action. We could repeat that. There's so many topics of interest that you've lit. Please, keep asking. We'll keep helping and supporting you. I don't think there's any there's evaluation reports, Mohammed, aren't they? They'll come out to you. We, as AFSAD executive, can you all come forward and take a table as soon as we finish, and we'll do a quick hot debrief. But before we do that, we have to say thank you to our panel members.